All right, and we're back here with Don Brzezinski. Some of our listeners are going to be listening thinking, where's the sideline show? Where's my sports show? Well, we're talking about something about significance and our identity, and that's where we're going to pick right back up, back here with Don Brzezinski of CrossLife Counseling. And what we're going to do is, we talked a little bit about our identity, and like you said, you want to go back to, it's our significance to a lot of us, as you want to matter, and you want to pick that up.
We talked about the fact that every human being has this driving force behind them. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of times we'll see young people and we kind of see them vacillating or getting into things that maybe as parents, you know, we're a little, oh no, what are they doing? And we might say, oh, they're just trying to find themselves, you know, especially once they launch and leave home and they kind of make some choices maybe that make us nervous. So they're just trying to find themselves. And half of that equation is, again, those security issues. The other half is significance issues or worth. You know, we can't live without knowing that we have a worth. But what is that? I need to know that my life has meaning, that it has purpose, that it counts for something, that, frankly, that I'm making an impact in whatever I'm doing, that what I'm doing is important, that what I'm doing is adequate. I don't want to do a half job, that what I'm doing is getting approval, that I'm getting respect. And every guy out there said, amen to that one.
Yeah.
I'm not respected. That I have a reason for getting up in the morning. I have a reason for living. You see, all of these things talk about the fact that we can't live without significance. Now, what is that? That I'm respected, that I'm recognized by someone. Now, some of us a little more hard-headed than others, and we'll spend the majority of our lives kind of picking through a smorgasbord of individuals and things, seeing if we can get our significance met, and then usually we're burned out, and we're disillusioned, and we're broken, and then we find out that it's really God that we were looking for.
Right. So once you just said, I think you said it earlier to break, we were talking a little bit about this, and I like the way you said it. You said, once we've exhausted all those options and they don't work, we find ourselves kind of face to face with God.
Absolutely. And God, you know, God is no respecter of persons. God's not upset with us because we took all that time. I mean, he knows what happened. He knows what went wrong. He knows the fix that the human race is in. And he has been pursuing us with a passionate, understanding, loving desire to bring about really a spiritual transformation in our lives so that we could discover the life that we've always longed to enjoy and experience. Because guess what? God gives us the desires of our heart.
Yeah, but that's such a foreign way of looking at it, especially like for me. Again, I was looking at it like, well, I don't, did I form that opinion because of the world, how my parents were? Like you said, he's pursuing us. He doesn't care what we've done. Like it's not like he's holding this record of wrong on us, and like he's going to say, well, I told you, and why'd you take so long? You know, you're not going to get that.
Well, and we have to understand that whatever wrongs were done, there is responsibility. There was damage, but God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. So obviously there was someone who took the debt, who paid the debt in our behalf and canceled the debt. And now God's wanting to reconcile us unto himself so that once again, we could experience the God-intended life that he originally wanted us to have.
Right.
You know, it's not like God's trying to get us to perform.
I know, and there was something else, you know, that just kind of hit me the other day. You know, I forgot exactly what the verse is where he talks about he's numbered the hairs on our head. It's not that he just knows the number. And some of us here has got a bigger number than others. but anyway, he's numbered it. It's not just like, and I've always wondered, I mean, I know how much I love my kids, but I haven't sat there and actually numbered their hairs. It's not like, I mean, I could see doing some ridiculous thing where I'm like, okay, he's got 10,632 hairs. But did I actually say that one is number one? That one's number two? I mean, just that little thing kind of impacted me on how, like you said, how much he pursues us, how much he really does love us. I think a lot of people have a hard time with it. I had a hard time with it. I'm like, how can he love me? Because, and what it really came down to is my performance hasn't been great.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, once again, if we're going to come back to us as a point of reference,
yeah,
our performance, and try to measure that against the perfect holy God, well, no wonder we want to talk about God.
Right.
You know, so maybe we can draw people into this conversation by asking a question. And I'm going to ask one and then kind of a second one.
Okay.
What is God's greatest purpose for your life? And to make that more personal, what is God's greatest purpose for you as his child? You know, you're a part of the human race.
Right.
So, ultimately, God created you. So why did God have kids anyway?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, why did he have children? Yeah, I'm sure some of us have asked that about our own kids sometimes. We're like, why do we even have kids?
Yeah, and how we would formulate our answer to that question says a lot.
Really?
Because often the way that we would formulate an answer kind of reveals a lot about the confusion that we have about God. And then we discover what God kind of reveals to us, and we realize that the way he answers the question is, quite frankly, much different than the way we thought he would have answered it.
Right, because I could probably give you four that probably the church, people that have grown up in church would answer that. One of them would be to obey him.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. I think even before we get to the obedience thing, I think most people would say, I think the greatest purpose for my life is to be happy.
Yeah.
I want to be happy. And when we think about that, what is happiness? We look at the English word, and it comes from essentially a root word that means chance, kind of rolling the dice.
Right.
That's what it means.
Like haphazard.
Yeah. Well, I could give you a little riddle on that, but the point is that it's happiness is based on happenings, circumstances. And, I don't know a lot of people that are happy about all their circumstances or all their happenings.
Or all the
life.
happenings going on around them. Yeah.
No. Some of those are not really great things.
No.
In fact, somebody said it this way, using that same kind of root from the English word H-A-P, hap. Somebody wrote this, as the happenings happen haphazardly, one might happen to be happy, perhaps, if there are no mishaps. The problem is there's tons of mishaps.
Yeah, there's too many mishaps. Like my brain trying to figure that whole statement out.
Yeah. Well, the point is, God's greatest purpose for our life is not to make us happy. Mm-hmm. So, as you suggested, sometimes people offer various answers to that equation.
Right.
Some might start by thinking, well, especially if they're in Christian circles, they might think, well, one of the reasons I kind of gave up on the God thing is that, God's greatest purpose for my life is he wanted me to serve him. And I kind of got burned out doing that thing. Every time I look, they're wanting me to do something else.
Right.
I mean, and pretty soon it's like, I don't know, enough hours in the day. I mean, if that's what it's all about, I'm checking out.
Well, yeah. And then I'm trying to think from, like, if you're looking at God's perspective, creating kids to serve you, how's that working out for you with your kids?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, Derek. My wife and I have had 8 children, 7 of which are still living. And can you imagine if I'd have gone to Joy after our first 2 kids and said, "Hey, why don't we have another boy? Because he could help serve me. He could help me with the duties around the house and cutting the grass and cleaning the garage and taking to work and then we should have another girl because she could help you with the laundry and the cleaning and that's insane. We don't have kids for them to serve us."
Yeah.
The reality is,
yeah, we're serving them.
We're serving them. We're doing our time.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And that serve also somewhat goes into the whole thought of people go to obey.
Yeah.
Again,
Well,
look at our kids.
Yeah.
How's that working for us there?
Yeah, and with that whole service thing, before we leave it, God is not served by human hands as if he needed anything.
Right.
The scripture tells us that. But yeah, the obedience thing, a lot of people got burned out trying to obey. That they thought that the bottom line was to obey. So I ask you as a parent, how'd that work for you with your kids?
Yeah.
You taught them to obey, but did they always carry through with the things that you asked them to do?
Right.
Obviously not. In fact, if kind of like some of mine, they learn how to work the system.
Yeah, no doubt.
So we're not suggesting that, that we weren't interested in obedience or that God wouldn't be interested in kids obeying. But the bottom line is God didn't create us to keep a set of rules,
right?
To keep the commandments. That wasn't the greatest purpose that God created us. Now, what's interesting as we begin to discover our real identity as God intended, as we say, well, it's not service and it's not obedience. As we formulate and really get the revelation of what our greatest intent was, we'll discover that some of these things happen naturally without trying.
Right, yeah.
We're no longer trying to perform, but we're in a relationship. And if you're in a loving relationship, don't a lot of these things kind of just happen naturally?
Yeah, you just all of a sudden find out, well, why am I doing that? You weren't doing it as a performance.
I didn't do it because I had to.
Right, you're just doing it out of love.
Exactly.
It's not, then it doesn't become a performance.
So that leads us to love. Was God's greatest purpose for you and I that we would love God?
I don't think so. If he's love,
yeah, he is love.
That makes zero sense.
Exactly.
If you put it in that equation.
Exactly. In fact, the truth is, I don't know about you, Derek, but, right. I thought that I understood love, when I got married 37 years ago.
Right.
And, since then, I've discovered what love was. And none of us really understand what love is apart from the one who is love.
Right.
And so God has to, once again, here's our word, reveal that to us. And it's revealed to us relationally as we walk through life, in the dynamics of life, in often the conflicts that we experience in life. And so if it's not service, and if it's not obedience, and if it's not love, then...
How about, here's a spiritual one for you. How about to glorify?
Oh, yeah. To glorify God. Well, I wouldn't argue that that's probably the essence of, what a lot of Christian teaching has kind of focused on, and that's probably an accurate statement. But here's a question for you. What does it mean to glorify God?
Right, but that's what I'm saying is like I know what you're saying, where it's sort of accurate, but the problem is we put the performance kick
right
on the glorifying. Like, we have to do this well or right to glorify him, but it has nothing to do with what we're doing, right?
If it's dependent on us, it's always going to be on some level flawed.
Filthy rags.
Exactly. The truth is, when it comes to this concept, God is glorified by only what God does himself.
Right. And if that happens to be through you, then, but it's still, he glorified himself through you. He is the source. Not your performance.
Only God can produce the godliness that glorifies God.
See, and just for the listeners, for me, I don't know about you, but when I've first had to get my head around this, it's just very liberating when you finally figure this out, that it's him. It's nothing that I have to do, think about, meditate on. That I've got to come.
Producer.
What do I have to do here? What do I have to produce? What trick do I have to perform? What service do I have to do? Once you get out of that, it's like, and I like how you talked about the reveal, as he reveals it as we have this relationship. And I think that picture's in the Bible when he's just telling people, come with me. And they were walking with Jesus. So, like, if just think about it, if you go on hike with your kids on a walk, as you go, you're going to be like, oh, look at that. Let's reveal that. And then you talk about this. And then other things are going to be revealed the further you go down the path.
Exactly. Well, you're talking about relationships with family and children, and I now have 4 grandchildren. I don't go around my grandkids trying to figure out how much they know or don't know. But we do relate to them and try to help them and reveal things to them and lead them and give them direction because we want them to experience love. We want them to experience the goodness. We want them to experience the best. And God is the same way. And so when we think about experience the goodness of God, or what we might call godliness, godliness is always a result of God at work. Notice who is not at work.
Right.
You see, it's a work of His grace through me, not me trying to produce it.
Right. So, and the key thing is, this is the thing that where we get off track is like I said, we're not producing it. We're just participating with the one that's doing it.
Key word.
Right.
Exactly. It is not like we've been hired by God to produce. It's not like that we were designed as some kind of mechanical, robotical machinery to crank out parts. No, we were designed relationally to participate and partner and fellowship with the one who is love, experiencing an amazing life that He had planned and purposed for us even before the foundation of the world.
Right.
That's what God has for us.
Now, for some of us, again, we talked about it earlier about pretty much you have to come to that brokenness point before you're going to get it. So, but how do you get through this if you're a little disillusioned, you're a little maybe angry at God? I'm sure you hear that one a lot. And it's really they're angry at themselves because they've been trying to be Lord of their life and their performances just aren't working out.
Well, once again, I think God has, it's almost like we could say that God self-limited Himself in creating human beings. Maybe we need to talk a little bit about what it needs to be human for a moment, because that would help us a whole lot. The first thing that God created with life capacity was the plant kingdom. And if we use kind of a Greek word to translate the Old Testament Hebrew, is the word bios. And we get words like biology, biography, biosphere. It has to do with body life. And so that's the whole plant kingdom. And there's life, there's teeming life out there. But the second thing that God created with life capacity was the animal kingdom. Now, obviously, animals had a bios, but the Greek word there is the word psyche. So they had a soul. They had a mind, a will, and emotions. And so, now animals, and they can do all kinds of things that plants can't. Right. But then God said, let's make man in our image. And He uses a third word there, and it's the word zoe. And it's not zoology like we would think in our dictionaries. It has to do with God's life. And so man, a human being, has 3 levels of life capacity: physiological, psychological, and spiritual. And within each one of those capacities of life, there is functionality, where we function as God designed us as human beings. Now, so here we have this human being, which was designed to be indwelt by the Creator Himself, whereby we would have a source other than ourselves to experience all God had planned and purposed for our life. The problem is we lost that imaging, we lost that source at the fall, and from that point forward, Adam and the whole human race, we were in this determined self-effort to get the thing done that we needed to get done for security and significance, and it would fail. So as we go through with the hurts, the rejections, the pains, the abuse, the traumas, the stuff of life, we finally get worn down to where we begin to once again have more of a Godward gaze, and we say, God, you know what? I can't do this anymore apart from you. Let me ask you this. A lot of people would think of life this way. And my question is this all there is to it? Is Is life simply all about growing up, getting an education, preparing for a job, getting married, gathering belongings, buying a home, having children, then beginning to help them grow up, help them get an education, help them prepare for a job, babysitting grandchildren, preparing for retirement, and then finally, retiring? Is that what it's all about? Because if that's all there is, we've missed the essence of life. And God is that life. And so I think that's why a lot of people are exhausted, because they've been trying to do it on their own. A good friend.
That sounds very like mechanical almost. Like it's like you're programmed. It's like
there's no relationship in that, is there?
Right. No. It just sounds very. I mean, you may have some relationships in that process, but it's just not very. It seems like it's very mathematical, cold, calculating, no life.
Yeah, there's no person, and as a result, personality for involved in that. Now, we would say during the course of our lives that we were doing it for our wives or our family, or we were doing it because of the job or whatever. But again, it's got to be something bigger than just ourself or ourselves. A good friend of mine years ago planned a dream vacation for he and his family.
Right.
They lived in Washington, D.C. area, and they were going to drive out to Glacier National Park. And so it was going to be a several-day drive, and the kids were, they were young. And this is before GPSs and so forth. And so his name was Carl. And Carl finally, after about 4 days of driving, announces to the family, says, "Kids, according to the map, we're there. So start looking out the windows. We finally made it, and we're there." And so they're all eagerly looking out the window, and they've studied, they were homeschool family, and they were anticipating this for months. And about an hour and a half after he announced to the kids that we're there, he was lost. So he pulls over to the side of the road, and he's like, "Man, what went wrong?" I mean, I've never been to Glacier National Park, but I looked it up. It's 1,584 miles big. It's 1,013,572 acres. How do you miss Glacier National Park? And so there he is, studying his map in the car. And his wife, she didn't have the nerve to say, "Honey, maybe we should ask for some help."
Not that he would have.
Yeah, not that he would have. And about that time, one of his kids reached over and said, "Hey, Dad, and look over here." And literally, they were side of the road. And as he turned to look at what his son was saying, there was a "Welcome to Glacier National Park" sign.
So they just drove out of it.
For the last hour and a half, they were in the park. Right. And yet they didn't know it. They missed the park. Now, I think, unfortunately,
that sounds like my life.
That looks like a lot of our lives.
It sounds like it.
We've been so busy doing, performing, gathering stuff, trying to do the dog eat dog, the race, and yet have we discovered life?
Right. Yeah, it's. It's a lot of heavy stuff that we're dealing with here, because a lot of it's truth. It's revelation coming to you. And I mean, our time is up for this hour, but what we're going to do is we're going to do several of these and just open up a dialogue. It's relationship. It's a journey, revelation, things getting revealed to you. So hopefully you'll tune in next time and we'll listen. And one of the things I want to go over next time is the two ways of living, flesh or spirit, and what you call this spiritual exchange.
Okay.
And I think that's a kind of a key on our journey here. So got to thank Don for today. We'll probably be back tomorrow or next week, however they program this, but we'll just call this, part 1 with Don. And then we'll do this again next time, and we'll see you later.